You know, the story of Jacob and Esau is one we all think we know. But let's dig deeper, because it's not just some simple fable. It's a gripping family drama. We're talking legal intrigue, serious psychological dysfunction, and consequences that just echo for generations. We're actually going to start at the end, right at the emotional peak. This quote, this isn't just a guy who's disappointed. This is the sound of a man's entire future, his very identity being absolutely shattered. This is Esau realizing that the blessing meant for him, the firstborn, has just been stolen by his own twin brother Jacob. And that raw, gut-wrenching emotion brings us to the central mystery of this whole thing. Why couldn't their father Isaac just say, "Whoa, wait a minute, that was a mistake," and just fix it? The answer is what makes this story so much more than a simple trick. To solve this mystery, we have to step out of the Bible for just a second. We're going to travel to the sands of modern-day Iraq, where archaeologists stumbled upon the first huge clue.
So here we are. This is the site of ancient Nuzu. Back in the 1920s and 30s, thousands of clay tablets from the 15th century BC were unearthed here. Think of it like a complete legal library that gives us this incredible snapshot of the world Isaac, Jacob, and Esau were living in.
And what those tablets revealed? Well, it changes everything. Turns out a father's spoken blessing wasn't just some nice wish. Oh no, it was a legally binding verbal last will and testament. Once those words left his mouth, that was it. The deal was done. It was final, irreversible, no takebacks. And that's the key. Isaac didn't just wish Jacob well. He legally transferred the entire family legacy, the leadership, all the wealth, and most importantly, the spiritual covenant from God. That is what Esau lost in that moment. And that's why Isaac's hands were tied. He was powerless to reverse it. Okay, so now we know how the blessing was unbreakable. But that just opens up the next big question. Why? Why did this even happen? What could possibly drive a mother and a son to cook up such a devastating plan against their own family?
Well, the Bible is brutally honest about it. This family was completely broken by favoritism. Isaac's preference for Esau was based on something as simple as loving the food he cooked. Meanwhile, Rebekah clearly favored Jacob. This house was a powder keg of divided loyalties, just waiting for a spark.
And the fallout from that, it's exactly what you'd expect. This kind of favoritism bred a deep, bitter rivalry. It made deception and secret conversations the norm. Rebekah wasn't just randomly eavesdropping. The story suggests this was just how they operated in a house filled with so much distrust. It was a crisis that was always going to end in hatred. So you see, her scheme to steal the blessing, that didn't just come out of nowhere. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It was the predictable explosion after years of this dysfunction just simmering under the surface. In her mind, she was probably acting to correct a spiritual wrong, even if her methods were just terrible. And this brings us to the most challenging, most intriguing part of the whole story. It's a potential plot twist that makes you question everything you think you know. Was Isaac really just a passive, clueless old man who got tricked? For centuries, we've pictured Isaac as this weak, confused, easily manipulated guy. But what if the text itself, when you read it really closely, is painting a picture not of a fool, but of a man making a tragic, calculated decision? The evidence is right there in Isaac's own words. Look at this. He questions Jacob not once, not twice, but 5 separate times. He questions his identity, how fast he got back, he demands to touch him, he asks point blank if he's really Esau, and then calls him in for one final test. This feels less like confusion and more like an interrogation. And then we get this incredible, pivotal line. Now, the usual way to read this is that Isaac is just kind of muttering confused, but listen to it again. He says, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau."
So that leads us to this really provocative question. What if he's not confused at all? What if he is simply stating the facts as he sees them? Yep, sounds like Jacob, feels like Esau. What if Isaac knows exactly who is standing in front of him?
This is the alternative theory. Isaac is an active, tragic participant in this whole thing. He knows it's Jacob, but he goes through with it anyway. Maybe his repeated questioning isn't to clear up his own confusion, but to make sure Jacob is truly committed to this deception. So why on earth would he do it? Well, this line might be the key. After all the tests, he smells Jacob's clothes and connects that smell to a field that the Lord has blessed. Some scholars think that in this moment, Isaac realizes he's not in control here.
He's submitting to a divine plan he can't fight, a prophecy given to his wife years ago that the older son would serve the younger.
But look, whether Isaac was tricked or was a willing participant, the result was exactly the same: a family completely ripped apart. So let's look at the tangled, messy consequences for every single person involved.
The chain reaction was immediate, and it was devastating. The stolen blessing leads directly to Esau's murderous threat. That threat forces Jacob to run for his life into a 20-year exile. And then, in this stunning twist of cosmic justice, Jacob, the great deceiver, is later painfully deceived by his own sons about his favorite child, Joseph. He reaps what he sowed.
And this is the bottom line. Yeah, God's prophesied plan for Jacob's family line was fulfilled, but that divine purpose did not give anyone a free pass for their actions. Rebekah lost her favorite son forever. Jacob lived in fear and exile. Esau was bitter and broken, and Isaac had to watch his own family completely self-destruct.
So this leaves us with the story's deepest and honestly most difficult tension. How do you square these two things coexisting at the very same time?
There's this ancient proverb that just seems to capture the essence of this entire saga perfectly. Everyone here, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, Esau, they all made their own plans, right? Based on favoritism, deception, and their own desires. And yet somehow, through all that mess, a larger divine plan was still being guided to its end. And that is the final heavy question this story just leaves hanging in the air for us. Can a flawed human plan, one born from deception and total family dysfunction, still end up fulfilling a divine purpose? This 4,000-year-old story seems to suggest that the answer is a complicated, and maybe for us, an uncomfortable yes.